So our last speaker for tonight is Susanne Tempelhof Tarkowski, who has created a form of Google government, if you will, without the Google, but with the same kind of underlying technologies. And with the same, I mean, not quite. She's going to present a way to, well, it has to do with Bitcoin and blockchains and democracy-like services. And it's better if I just let her introduce herself. It's really interesting. Please welcome Susanne Tarkowski Temple.
Local. Which one? Local.
The lower one is for presentation.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, actually, I started to write a book a while back called The Google Mental, the DIY and do-it-yourself way to start your own nation and change the world. Little did I know that I would actually speak at Google about it. When I first started out, I actually first started out about a decade ago, believe it or not, because my father was stateless and my family were all foreign in Sweden. And I was the only one with a Swedish citizenship in my family. So it always boggled my mind why we were all supposed to live within the same laws without having the same rights. And, you know, what this whole sort of arbitrary drawn lines in the sand were all about, right? So I started to explore this idea of nation states and what the whole point of it was. And my conclusion was there was no point in it, none at all. So hence I started writing about it. And so, you know, I spent 10 years basically thinking about it and writing about it. And in the meanwhile, I also spent 7 years working as a government contractor, trying to build and overthrow governments, which gave me a pretty good view on, you know, what people wanted for governance and what the pros and cons of various types of governments was. And then finally, you know, I got a book deal. I decided to quit as a government contractor. I got a book deal to write about this instead. And when I started to write about it, I discovered the blockchain technology. And the Bitcoin blockchain technology is a decentralized public ledger, right? And I'll get right back to that, but that's basically what my talk is about. So to get back to the basic challenge, okay, full disclosure, I looked up Google X talks online and I know how to present it. I know there's the challenge. I know there's a solution, and then I know that there is the practical question to discuss in public, right? So I structured it just like that. Okay, so to get right to the essence of it, what is the problem? The problem is that there is a de facto geographical apartheid in the world, and it covers the entire globe, all of us, even us in Sweden with Swedish passports. Because why? Because we are born in a place that we did not choose in any type of way. We're just randomly born within these arbitrary lines called the borders, which makes up Sweden, right? And we have to submit to the laws of Sweden, whether we want it or not. We have not chosen this, not in any type of sense or way, right? And that's okay, being Swedish, right? But what if you're born in Bangladesh? That's not so okay. What if you're born in Burundi or Congo? Then it's much less okay. You're not a worse person. You just have been born in the wrong place, right? And so there's a geographical apartheid between people being born with good passports and people being born with bad passports. And this geographical apartheid, which covers billions of people, we can end it right now. And it's not very complicated. We have the technical solution to end it. Okay, so if we look at the numbers, I know there is way too much text on this slide. But anyways, I will try to break it down quickly in a few sentences. The nation-state construct in itself is a geographical oligopoly on governance. Okay, so to be a nation-state, you have to be recognized by other nation-states. And that creates an oligopoly, right? The only way you can opt out of the nation-state oligopoly is to move to Antarctica. And that is under threat as well, because, you know, between the Russians and the Americans, you know, Antarctica will no longer be free as well. So there is de facto no way to technically opt out of the nation-state oligopoly, apart from if you opt out in a technological way, which the blockchain allow us to do. And the problem with that is that the nation-state governments do not have any incentives, none whatsoever, to provide us good services. Some people say democracy, you know, well, they're under pressure because there will be an election every 4 years. So what is that? It's just replacing the top layer of the government, you know, through a majority election once every 4 years. Listen, if I want to replace my insurance policy, I replace it the same afternoon, and it's going to cost me nothing. That's competition. Elections, democracy is a scam. Democracy is not competition in any way at all. Sorry about that. So there are billions of people who have so-called bad passports. Okay, a bad passport means that you can't move to any other country. A bad passport means that, you know, imagine if you're born in Bangladesh and you're not happy with your government, which is most likely the case. You can't, you know, we are born with a Swedish passport, most of the people in this room, right? We can move to UK, we can move to Australia, we can move to US fairly easily. If you're born in Bangladesh, you cannot, okay? Because nobody will accept you in your country because you have a shit passport, and you will be seen as a poor refugee, and everybody will hate you, you know, just when you sort of start with your accent and whatnot, right? So that's a dead end. So you have no geographic movement at all, and no incentive. Oh, sorry about that. And no incentive to move out. Sorry. So, and these are billions of people on Earth who cannot migrate to other countries, who do not actually have a choice. And in these markets, frontier and emerging markets, they do not have access to basic services, right? What does that mean? You know, me as an anarchist libertarian, I would think that's a good thing, right? Not be under the pressure from the state to have an identity, to incorporate, all of those things. But actually it isn't, because if you live in those markets and you can't prove your identity, you can't incorporate, you can't title your land, you can't write a will, you can't write a childcare contract, etc. That means you have no way to protect your assets. And the blockchain solves all of those problems very easily and very cheaply so. And the other thing is, if you live outside of the financial system, meaning that you don't have access to, you don't have a credit card, you don't have a debit card, you don't have a bank account, you don't have any of those things at all, you can't participate in the global financial systems, which means you can't borrow money to expand your business. You can't do any of those things. You can't get international customers. It's all a downhill spiral. And so what numbers are we looking at here? We're looking at 2.5 billion in the world that are currently unbanked, and that's just adults. You know, we're not talking about elders or children, right? And considering that we are 7 billion on Earth, so that's a big part of the entire global population. System D, the so-called shadow markets, gray markets, which are not illegal markets like, well, think about prostitution or gun trade or anything. That's not what we're talking about here. The system D, the gray markets, are just like a fruit vendor in Thailand, in Bangkok, selling fruits on the streets, right? That is not incorporated and who is not subject to any regulations. That is what the gray market is. It's not illegal, it's just unregulated. And that is a $10 trillion economy a year. If it was a nation state, it would be the second biggest market in the world. That is some numbers to consider. And the frontier and emerging markets at large are home to 80% of the world's population as a whole. So we're not talking about, a small lost Indian tribe in the Amazonas here, We're talking about the majority of the world, actually. Billions and billions of people, probably 4 or 5 billion out of 7. So that is quite some numbers to consider. Okay, so how do we solve this apartheid of people who have no social, political, or financial mobility just because they're born within arbitrary borders with a piece of paper telling them you have no right and you're fucked? Bitnation, my company, of course. All right, so to take this back to basics, basically what we are trying to do is to outcompete the nation states through making it irrelevant, just for offering better and cheaper and quicker services, not only, but primarily through using the blockchain technology. So Bitnation is the world's first actual functional virtual nation. It's a collaborative platform, and what that means is that everybody, the essence of the platform is that everybody can upload their own P2P decentralized application, DApp, as it's called in its sort of fancy crypto way. But you can also call it an app, which is the standard way to call it. And you can upload it in a geographically unbound, decentralized, and voluntary way, meaning that we provide all the services a traditional nation state provides, but we provide it without any of the strings attached. The normal government doesn't. So basically, our vision is that we want to set a precedent where everybody can create their own nation, where there will be hundreds of thousands or even millions or billions of nations that are offering government services on a competitive free market. And they are competing simply through offering better services than party arbitrators more than anything, right? They are like, okay, so if the two of us have a dispute, we may not get along here. And then the government will step in and they will say, well, we are a sort of neutral part in this, and we will have the final say in this. Okay, so we will all submit to that because, hey, it's the government, right? And the Bitcoin blockchain removes all of that, right? The Bitcoin blockchain is de facto the third-party arbitrator. So we do not longer need any third-party arbitrators. We can do all of those things, all of the disputes through the Bitcoin blockchain. And that's basically what the government is good for, and no longer, So we have effectively replaced the point of the government. So that is the real, great invention of the Bitcoin blockchain. It also, it have a variety of functions. Some of them are, tokenization. So you can make basically anything a tradable instrument, whether it's property, whether it's a land title, whether it's corporate equity, whatever. And timestamping is like basically a public notary, right? You can timestamp whatever you want. It can be a will, it can be a birth certificate, it can be whatever. So that offers a huge amount of possibilities. And smart contracts will open many, that's still in a sort of way too early stage to really debate in an accurate type of way. But smart contracts will make it automatically executable, whatever you agree to. And what would be the best way for Bitnation to support third-party developers, besides obviously having a good API in?
Thank you.
So, and I apologize that I'm so bad at controlling things. We've done while over time. We have time for one or two quick questions. Yes.
Hello. I have a question about the 0.5 billion people. How are they going to be helped by this technology? And also, let's start with that question.
Should I take the mic? Right.
So that question elaborated is how will they have access to this, and without any money coming from higher societal classes, how will they be enabled to rise up from their current level?
Well, okay, so first of all, they're enabled by Bitcoin before anything else, right? So, which means if they are currently unbanked, it gives them the access to a global financial system, the ability to quickly transact money to whoever they want across the globe for barely no fees and instantly. So, without Bitnation, they're already empowered through that. But with Bitnation, they will be much more empowered because we also provide the whole ecosystem around it, which means the identity system, which is hugely important. Like if I want to rent a property from you, right? And I have an identity to prove it, saying like, oh, well, this is what my former business colleague says about me. This is what, this is like my land titles. This is my marriage contract. This is like all my ecosystem of contracts, right? Then you will be able to trust me. If we don't have that, we don't have a trust relationship. So it's basically the ecosystem of trust relationships that will be truly valuable and that will truly empower people. So yeah, I mean, more than anything else, it's the ID and reputation system and the dispute resolution system.
Okay, thank you. And okay, I can have one more question. Is okay, right? So you said regarding the liberal market and the fact that you can opt in and opt out of paying tax, how would you respond to what Piketty says about tax being required to have a wealthy nation and in the long term?
Well, first of all, I don't think we should have nations at all. So I don't
right,
get
but
your
this
question.
is still a nation, but decentralized. It's still economically, it will have the same functions as a nation. No.
No, not really. I mean, I would like you to look at Bitnation more in the same way you would look at an insurance company or a social media platform. We charge money based on the services we provide. We do not charge money on
right,
the
but the
basics
people
that
who
we
don't
have
have
a
money,
geographical monopoly on
how will they have
violence.
access to it?
So no, I mean, there's no taxes per se, no.
Okay.
Hello. I was just trying to think a bit how it would work in terms of education and just kind of maybe a bit following. I'm just thinking, for example, right now you're a refugee in Syria. You would want to use this nation as an alternative to your situation, for example. But I mean, the people in this room are quite well educated, most of us, and aware and involved in these issues, and how to actually educate people. And then I'm talking of an adult, but let's talk about children or education in general, because as in even to use a system, like even if you have a normal government, if we can say that in Sweden, you have education and you're educated how the system works. So have you thought education of this alternative Pangea Bitnation, how you would get the information to your users and the users that are without any other government, how they would get education for their children, the same way that they get the house that you mentioned in the example, and that they get the money and the land. But I'm thinking more of more intangible assets like knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the core features of Bitnation is our global worldwide ambassador network. Yeah? And so we have currently an ambassador network that spans over every single continent right now, apart from Antarctica. And
so they're like teachers or like
Well, I wouldn't call them teachers exactly, but let's say community engagers, And so, I mean, part of their mission is obviously to engage and communicate and teach those things, right? Teach the possibilities of the blockchain technology.
What about other things that not just the blockchain technology? Because if you don't have a government or people don't pay their taxes,
Mhm.
if they don't have that system, then where they would get knowledge? Maybe that's something to consider now for the challenge also. I'm just thinking.
Well, what do you mean exactly? I mean,
Because if you don't pay taxes, if you don't have schools, if you don't have teachers, and you still want people to have knowledge, I'm just brainstorming a bit. Could there be alternative ways of, teaching these people, or like not only knowledge about your Bitnation, but knowledge in general? How could we teach about every other thing that you learn in school? Because then you're not paying taxes, you
Yeah.
don't have schools.
right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, currently there are like a number of online service providers for education that are currently free of charge, like the Aga Khan Foundation and many others like it. So, I mean, there is pretty good, both primary school and high school and university level, even education online for free. So, and they have pretty good underground networks to reach out to people. But yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, that's a good point. We could definitely do a greater push towards that, indeed.
I think I have to barge in by the help of my good friend here. And we have to finish our last speaker. And thank you very much, Susanne.